Hello, welcome to part 1, lecture 1, part 4, intro to module 1, part 2. We are in the second part of module 1, which is a continuation of our previous discussions regarding the United States education and the formation of public schools and the standards by which we are held by today. So this week's lecture will focus on the how do we start to really look at integrating a really standardized based process of instruction for the differentiated environments that we teach in. So the first part of this will be looking at teaching and assessment models. So I'm going to show you some strategic ways to integrate both teaching and assessment. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of you already use these, but focusing in on them will give you a little bit more intentionality and maybe a little more structure in your process. And then we will also look at the actual differentiating process, meaning sense making, so how students acquire the knowledge tied to the assessments that we use. So by the end of this lecture, you should be able to apply the tools presented to begin developing differentiated assessments and instructional processes that diversify the sense making process. In other words, they should go hand in hand. What you assess should be integrated in your teaching approaches, and it should all be a differentiated process. There are 2 main readings and 1 supplemental reading, a part of this week's readings, and they are reading 2, teaching and assessment, the instructional process, and then reading 3, differentiating process in how to differentiate instruction in mixed ability classrooms. And we've used this textbook before, but we'll be focusing on pages 79 through 84, which is a change from the differentiating products, which we'll get to further on in the course. There is a supplemental reading that you can take time to look at. I thought it was some interesting information, some thoughts on grading systems and grading practices, and that looks at world practices as well as the practices we have, and it goes from secondary and primary to higher education practices, and also looks at mobile access to education and where we are in comparison to other countries. So you can look at that if you like to, but it's not a requirement. By the end of this lecture series, so a little different, the lecture part 5 is split up into 2 sections because I didn't want to overwhelm you with an extremely long lecture. So there is a brief intermission period, and then I'll start the second part. Consider this week's content because this week's content provides an opportunity to explore models of teaching that intentionally integrate assessment methods that aim towards certain approaches to student learning. Consider like your practices currently and how you're applying what you do now, because the greatest thing you can have is a system, as it will help to support the learning results that you want to see from students. So consider how you currently assess learning in the relation of this process to your instructional methods. Okie dokie, well, that will be all. The next steps here are obviously to begin the reading. There are 2 readings, and then go to the lecture, and there's only a quiz for this week. I hope you enjoy your week and enjoy the content for this week's module.